Hello, welcome back to the YouTube channel of Bethel Evangelical Free Church, Hanley. I'm Pastor Gervais Charmley, and as you've already guessed, this is another video, or you've seen from the title, of course, this is another video from my series on Welsh churches in North Wales, and mostly, the first couple we did were in Flintshire, but I did. We're in Flintshire, but this is in Denbighshire, like most of the other churches in the series. This is the Church of St Elidan, Llanelidan. Now, who was St Elidan? Well, the facts of the matter are undoubtedly that Elidan was a Celtic priest, a Celtic minister who settled in the area and who made this the centre of his evangelization of the surrounding area. According to that glorious but gloriously unreliable historical source, Geoffrey of Monmouth, he was a bishop, Elidanus, who was appointed by none other than Uther Pendragon himself, that is the father of King Arthur. How far can we trust that? Not very far. But it's a nice story. Geoffrey was very good with nice stories. This building, as we see it today, is 13th century. It replaced an earlier building on the same site. And originally there would have been a little hut, and a little church, and probably a gathering of huts for St Elidan and his followers. So, you know how these videos work. I give a brief introduction and then we wander around the church as I am enthusiastic about the various things that can be seen here, and much can be seen here. So without further ado, let's do our perambulation of the interior. So here we are, we're inside St Elidan's, and the first thing I'm concentrating on is the arcade. This is a double church. It's one of the typical forms of church in this part of Wales is the double church. And unusually, in this case, the entrance is on the north side, and that means that in the 19th century, indeed at the Reformation era most likely, the north side becomes the main church. So you can see here that there is a display at the east end on the south side, but there is the altar on the north side, and also the pulpit. It's quite common. It was indeed a sort of Reformation normality to have the pulpit on the north side. We'll just back all the way up here, back up so that we are so we can look up at the roof. Another medieval roof here, and you can see over the chancel, that again is a medieval ceiling emphasizing this is the sacred end, and you see that there would have been a screen across at that end screen as we saw at Derwen and at Clocainog, and that screen would have had, as at Derwen, a gallery, a rood loft, which would have run probably at the height of the capitals of the columns. There is a nice big font, again a medieval font. The whole point is that you've got a bowl that's big enough to dunk an infant in. This is immersion of infants. This is the norm in the British Church, in the Church of England, the Church in Wales, until the 17th, 18th century. Until the 18th century, the norm is immersion of infants. John Wesley, as an Anglican clergyman, when he went out to Georgia in the Americas, he got in trouble for insisting on not only immersion, but triple immersion of infants, and his his parishioners didn't like it. There's the remains of a medieval screen there, and up there you can just see some medieval glass. It's all a bit jumbled, it's just a few remains, but there is some medieval glass reminding us that these big windows at the east end, and there's even some medieval glass in the east windows here, they would have been filled with decorative glass. There's an internal porch, which is very useful in the winter in this part of the world, and black and grey radiator and hot water pipes, again very important. You will see the pulpit is made of old panelling, but the panelling doesn't appear to be originally pulpit panelling. It appears to be originally panelling from other things, perhaps from pews. Some of it appears, certainly you've got that vine there, which looks very much like it might have been from, and this too might have been from the old rood screen. That top is a bit more pulpity, but it does appear to be made out of bits and pieces. It's a nice set of rails with they're designed to prevent big dogs getting in and causing trouble inside the sanctuary enclosure. And here again you can see that medieval roof, and some of this carving is very similar to that on the medieval ceiling here. Corbels and a little bit of carving there. You've got your piscina now concealed behind panelling made of old box pews, and you can tell they're old box pews because you've got initials on them, and the date is at 1715, I think. It might clergy chair, nice, Victorian of course, but brass candlestick, more old panelling at the back, and again I think it's all reused. A bit of medieval glass can be seen up there, coloured glass in the windows. We look west, and you've got the central arcade, you've got the organ pipes at the west end, and the real organ pipes. Those aren't artificial pipes. In the pulpit again, all that recycled panelling on it. You can see how high it is to dominate the church so that everyone can hear, and it's instructive to compare this with the arcade at Llanellidan, where Llanellidan is the transitional between the Norman and the pointed. This is full pointed, and you can see the capitals there, as the lectern for reading the scriptures, the organ console, and we come into the south aisle. There's an old communion table. That would have been the table before the altar was brought down. Again, we have here a very Welsh thing. You won't find this outside of Wales. This tray is for gifts at weddings, that you would give gifts to the church at a wedding. And it's a very Welsh custom. Often they're folding. This one appears to be fixed in the corner here, but often they are folding. And it's one thing to look out for in a Welsh church, is look out for this tray. The floor has a bit of carpeting. It's mostly this parquet flooring. There's a good display on the history here, which deals with the legends, the burials, the Middle Ages. Here we have an image of what it would have been like with the screen, that you would have had your rood screen, which has long since had its day and ceased to be. This is a church which has a lot of influence from a local big house, and again you've got your important memorials. So you have here Humphrey Jones of Ddwl in Merionethshire, who was a person that lived not only unblameable but a life virtuous and pious, and was early taken to a better before he completed his 26th year, A.D. 1676. His relict Jane, eldest daughter of Eubal Thelwall of Nantclwyd, Esquire, hoping to be here interred with him and to enjoy with him the blessing of a happy resurrection, as a lasting instance of her affection, dedicated to his memory. He had issue by her Maurice, Eubal, and Elizabeth, whereof the first Maurice, Eubal, and Elizabeth, whereof the two first survived him. Nearby is interred the above-mentioned Mrs. Jane Jones, in whom were happily intermixed the manly sense of her father and the meekness and piety of her mother. She was so good a wife, so tender a mother, so true a Christian. A Christian, you will notice, is abbreviated as XTA. The X, of course, is the Greek chi. You'll also notice the two little winged heads underneath, just like the heads up there. So true a Christian, discharged all the duties relating to both this life and the next, with so much strictness and regularity, that who desires to deserve best need but imitate her, and of the person you would commend the most, it is enough to say she is like her. She died at Chester, 23rd of February, Anno Domini 1711 to 12. This is because there were two ways of counting the year, one of which had it beginning in January, the other, I believe, had it beginning in March. So depending on how you did it, old style or new style, depended on whether it was 1711 or 12. We'd say 1712. All more Thelwalls. There's Eubal Thelwall Esquire, Chancellor at Law and Vice Chamberlain of Chester, who was eminent in his profession and qualified for public service, but without the ambition to effect it, he contented himself with his own private sphere, managed his own affairs with great prudence, and discharged all his relations like a wise man and a good Christian, and endeared himself to all who knew him by all kind offices and an obliging conversation. He was third son to John Thelwall of Bathafern Park, Esquire, and married Mary, sole daughter and heir to William Parry of Nantclwyd, Esquire, by whom he left issue Eubal, Orlando, Jane, Dorothy, and Anne, besides Mary, John, Eubal, William, Mary, and Bevis, who died before him. You will notice the reuse of the name Eubal from one of the children who died for one of the ones who survived. He deceased in the 74th year of his age, February the 4th, 1694. His sorrowful relict, who has a more sacred impression on her own breast, has erected this monument to preserve his memory to posterity when the living witness of his great merits will fail. And there below is a memorial to her, which is partially concealed, sadly. Here we have the Kendricks of Nantclwyd, and this is the latter part of the early part of the 19th century, and they're not quite as florid in their inscriptions as the late 17th, early 18th century, but the late 17th century is wonderful. We are that bloody pulpit made of old panelling, but it's a wonderful period for this sort of moralistic inscriptions that say what a wonderful person they were, and you say, yes, but what about the gospel? What about being a Christian, which is being saved by grace? And again, this medieval ceiling up there, which once again, this one actually extends further, which makes me suspect that this would have been where the main altar was. Again, it's the south side. We have here an old Victorian Welsh Bible. It's interesting that you notice that the plate has its inscription in English, but the Bible is in Welsh. I think this is an English publisher or someone getting English pictures, and they're not bothering to get a new caption in Welsh. And here we have an ancient Welsh Bible. This is going to be again your William Morgan, Ezekiel, and Daniel. And this is not Welsh at all, is it? This is either an early This is an early authorized version, I would suspect. No, it's not. No. This is more likely a Geneva Bible. Well, one likes the Geneva. The Geneva was the Puritan Bible. Yes, because you can tell, because it's got these notes, and the notes were not there in the authorized version. Yes, it's a good example of an old Bible, the old black letter text. So you've got your Welsh and your English. And here we are looking again at that arcade, the porch, the pulpit. The pulpit is placed to be seen from as many different places as possible. And here we have the box pews. There's a big house here, so we have front box pew is the big house. And this is your original height box pew. You can see they're quite high. And you've got a door that can be opened and closed to allow folk to get in and out of your box pew. And once you're in there, you're beautifully ensconced. Yes, you've got the, it's still used by the Big House family, it looks like, because there's your personalised kneelers with their personalised crest on. You see seats both sides, because what you're doing is you're facing the pulpit. You're not facing the communion table all the time. More remains of box pews are panelling around here, by the way. But here we have surviving box pews. Here, the date 1769. This is a plate there with the name of the house. 1760, 1769, and all the box pews along this side. More Nantclwyd memorials, and Nantclwyd's are the Big House around here. and this would originally have been behind the pulpit, behind the altar rather, or the communion table. This is the Lord's Prayer on the one hand, and the Creed, and then in the middle the Ten Commandments. And there's the bier, rustic bier for carrying the deceased to their burial. It's a magnificent church, magnificent medieval building, and it's been reordered many times, been reordered for Reformation worship, reordered more recently. You can see that apart from the box pews this end, all the pews have been replaced with quite recent ones, late 19th, early 20th century. It bears the marks of its history. You can see there, look at the radiators gathered around the the westernmost pier of the arcade. Well, there we are, that's the interior. Let's head outside and have a look around. So here we are outside at Llanelidan. If I'm slightly distracted, there's a small dog here. Can't see its owner. But here is St Elidan's church. The outside is again very plain, very low. It would have been whitewashed originally, hence there's not too much emphasis on the condition of I suspect the dog is low. And there's not too much emphasis upon the size and arrangement of the stones. Well, let's have a look around the outside and try and trip over the small local dog who is exploring the churchyard. So here we are, Llanelidan. Sneezing noises, this little dog here. Say hello, dog. I don't think it's a church dog. I think it lives at the pub next door. I think it's wandered through. Yes, there's an open gate. And obviously enjoying the churchyard. So here we are. You can see this is the south side of the building, South Church, and as we travel up, the church is surrounded by yew trees, so it's not one of the easiest to photograph. Certainly get the whole thing in because you've got these trees around it. But there we are. That's the south side. You can see those 15th century windows. I suspect they thought, well, we've got a good enough church right now. There's sheep grazing on the hill above, and you can see here. This is again, it's a round churchyard. It's been extended, hence it's no longer completely round. But this is an ancient clan site. This is, of course, St Elidan's clan. It's the east end with its two east windows. Massive collection of ancient yews. Here is Catherine Richmond, who was born at Fleet in Galloway, so that's in southwestern Scotland, died at Plasnewydd, Llanfair, March the 10th, 1853, aged 74, after a service of more than 5 years in the family of Elizabeth Ann Jones of Plasnewydd, esteemed by all. That's actually very interesting because obviously this is a servant's tomb. This is going to be she's likely to be the housekeeper, the senior female servant. It's unusual to see that kind of inscription on a memorial. Now, this is not simply her memorial. This is also that of Elizabeth Ann Jones of Plasnewydd, Llanfair, different Clywyd, who was the eldest daughter of John Chambers Jones Esquire of Bryn Steddfod, and died 26th of March 1869, was it 25th, in her 84th year. And on the other side, this is her beloved servant. See the dog exploring there, sorry. And here we are, the east end, the two big windows showing where the two east ends are, and you see here where they meet. We continue around towards the Lich Gate. There is a little Lich Gate. It's a 19th century example made entirely of wood. It's not your traditional Welsh Lich Gate. It doesn't make it any worse, it just makes it different, and not traditional Welsh. So there's the Lich Gate. Beside is the village hall. The village is beyond on the hill. So here we are. very much little country church in its little country churchyard. The churchyard, the old part, is not too well known. Again, that's deliberate. It adds to its rustic appearance, among other things. The north side is slightly longer than the south, and it has its porch on. Again, that's medieval. With it, the window here has been restored 1618. You can see here that big solid timber and there the curve of the churchyard. Always a sign of an ancient site here in Wales, and that often finds around churchyards and other places, but they are Christian sites. It's not a sign, as it might be in some parts of the world, of a pagan site that's been taken over. More of this decorative use of red sandstone. It's not a pagan site that's been taken over. We're here, that's part of the parkland there. War Memorial is always very important. The Leyland Arms public house beyond there. So you've got your inn and church next to each other. It's a very common juxtaposition. See there's an old door. This is the corner where the south side comes out further. Here is an old font. This is a font that would have been used in the 19th century before the current font, which it does look medieval, but maybe a more modern reproduction. But this is the kind of font that you'd have for sprinkling. You don't need a huge big bowl for sprinkling, but you do for immersion. So here we are. We'll come out here, you see the gate here down to the Leyland Arms, because obviously when you're these village churches, have folk going down to the pub after Sunday service. So we're not supposed to do that, but that's what people did. And you can see over there's the chapel. There's actually two chapels in the village, but you can only see one. That was the Baptist chapel. And here we are in the corner here, and very pleasant little church. Well, there we are. That's the church of St Elidan, Llanelidan. I hope you enjoyed this. I certainly enjoyed making it and exploring this little church. Last time I was here, it was quite late in the day, and I was cracking on in order to avoid being too late. But good to be here and have plenty of time in the middle of the day and in the summer, and see the beauties of this building once again. Well, thank you for watching, and may God bless you and keep you. Amen.